It was neither a hurricane nor a tropical storm, but the remnants of Hurricane Matthew have pummeled Cape Breton Island with hurricane-style rainfall and flooding and tropical storm force winds. The streets and the roads and the basements, many of them are still waist deep in water tonight. The schools were closed today. Many thousands of people in Cape Breton and elsewhere will spend at least another night without power. Good evening, everyone. The storm has produced flash flooding, the likes of which we haven't seen around here in many, many years. We have extensive coverage of the aftermath of post-tropical storm Matthew. Ryan McDonald, Kyle Moore, Kellen Sundall, all in Cape Breton, and Marie Adset in Halifax. And meteorologist Cindy Day with a look at why so many people seem to be caught off guard by this storm. But we're going to begin tonight with the Mayor of Cape Breton Region, Cecil Clark. He's joining us now live from his community. Mayor Clark, I know you've had a very, very long night and a long day. How do you assess the situation in the CBRM at 6 o'clock tonight?
Oh, it's just literally night and day from yesterday, Steve. We've had a horrendous time, very devastating to watch your community literally be under siege of water, and then with high winds, no power, trees coming down everywhere. Yet we've recovered well. All of our resources have been deployed. People have done an excellent job. Our volunteer fire and community's been helping community. And tonight now we're stronger for it.
You've been in politics a long time. You were in government during Hurricane Juan. How does this compare to what you might have seen after that storm, which is so well known in Nova Scotia?
Yeah, I was in Halifax during Hurricane Juan, and literally with trees coming in windows, it was quite devastating. This was a different type because there was localized impacts here. And so in Glace Bay and Sydney, very negative outcomes, and we're still dealing with the aftermath of that. And so it's a different widespread spectrum of challenge that we've been facing with all of our resources. At the same time, it really came with no notice. We just thought we were getting some heavy rains, and then 220 millimeters later, we found ourselves, like I say, underwater and under siege. But at the same time, people rallied immediately to support each other. We were out at all hours of the night. Staff have been working 20 plus hours and doing what they have to do to get the job done and get stability in the community, but they're still far from over because there's a lot of repair and recovery work to do.
What about that, the lack of notice? How concerned are you about that? How do you explain that there was so little notice to you and your people?
Well, and as I understand it, we had two weather systems that just happened to collide to make the perfect storm, and an unprecedented weather event here that once we realized the magnitude of it, everybody stepped up. The emergency command center was put in place, EMO was on scene, and we worked together as a community. And last night I traveled up to Eskazoni with Chief Leroy. They were literally shut down as a community, no power, and we wanted to support each other. So even though we weren't expecting it, yep, I think everyone rallied and did what they had to do.
I want to hit you with a few quick points because people are concerned about whether there is
Yes.
a public health threat from the water. We've heard reports about sewage backing into water. What is your sense of how much danger there might be in some of the standing water?
All of our regular water systems for drinking water is safe, and so there's no boil odor. What the water you see behind me is what we're concerned about, because it is experiencing contamination, and that's what we're concerned about children playing. That's a natural thing for them to want to go out of curiosity, and we're asking people to be very mindful. There is, you can smell traces of furnace oil from the water behind me, lots of debris. So we have to be very careful about that environmental impact.
I know it's not strictly your department. What's the word on school tomorrow?
Police advised the school board, so we're just waiting on that. They're doing really about the situational analysis of what roads will be shut down. The school next to me is still underwater right now, flooding into the school, so there's going to be localized closures anyway.
Hearing some reports about long lineups for gasoline. Are there in fact any impending shortages, any concerns you have in that respect, Mayor Clark?
I think we're doing okay on that front. Initially, after any storm, people want to stock up and be prepared, being concerned. What I'm concerned about now is the fact that we're dealing with power outages still. We have weather temperatures are dipping. We're concerned about the vulnerable in our community. The hospital's been a very much a large concern, operating on emergency power. Right. Getting power restored to those areas is very important.
Finally, you are asking for disaster assistance. What is your sense of how much damage there is in the CBRM?
Well, it's a $3 million threshold to trigger the program. We met today with provincial officials. We're triggering that application. We've advised of them that. The Premier's here tomorrow to meet and get a briefing, as well as get an update on where we're going with next steps. So we're into the millions. At what point of how much, we're just not certain, but we know we've definitely triggered the threshold of 3 million, and much more to come, unfortunately.
Final word, do you, anything you want to say to your residents here tonight by way of survival information or anything else?
Well, I just want to say to residents, they've been very good to be engaged and helping out their neighbors. And we have a Neighbors Helping Neighbors program. To check out the Facebook and media streams that we have. There's ways that people can reach out and be supportive. We do have an emergency shelter set up with the Red Cross at our Grand Lake Road Emergency Center and 2 comfort stations. If people have any needs, please contact our centers, and we will get them there safely. Their safety is our #1 concern, and comfort and well-being is at the forefront, and that's why people are working around the clock to make sure this community's back and operational as best it can be as soon as possible, Steve.
Mayor Cecil Clark, we appreciate your time. It's been a very long couple of days for you and your community. We're with you. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
That is the mayor of the Cape Breton region, Cecil Clark. And as the mayor has said, many thousands of people in this region are without power tonight, not just in Cape Breton. The washed out roads and structural damage to poles there are hampering efforts to get them all reconnected. The latest number from Nova Scotia Power, and this is as of just a few minutes ago, 32,998 customers, that would be service addresses off the grid. NSP says it now could be 11 o'clock Thursday morning. That's 11 o'clock day after tomorrow before all of the power is restored on the island of Cape Breton. There are some service disruptions in Prince Edward Island tonight, only about 500 according to Maritime Electric. And in New Brunswick, NB Power has that number down to 171 off the grid. They're mainly in Sackville and Bayvert, and NB Power says they should be back online by 10 o'clock tonight. Let's bring in meteorologist Cindy Day now. You know, on Friday, and you were tracking this thing all week, it seemed on Friday like the remnants of Matthew would be down in the tropics by now, that they were going to loop back down and perhaps hit Bahamas again.
That's right.
This is nowhere near what was expected. What happened?
No, it went back to the early in the week thinking, Steve. If you recall, on Monday and Tuesday, we were saying this was going to come into the Bay of Fundy or say just off the eastern shore region of Nova Scotia and impact the Maritimes. Then by Wednesday, all of the computer models pushed the remnants of Matthew back down towards the Bahamas, as you say. So the blocking high we talked about that was going to block, and then the cold front that was going to come in to give us a little bit of rain on Sunday, the timing on those two systems changed just enough to trigger moisture that fed up into the trough of the cold front that slowed down the cold front. So let's have a quick look. This is what was left of Matthew after it made landfall along the South Carolina coast Saturday. The interaction with the cold front that was a little slow crossing New Brunswick into Nova Scotia. It stalled over the northwest corner of New Brunswick. The moisture started to feed up into the trough, and instead of kicking off to the east, that low pressure system traveled right in that cold frontal line. It was a very unusual storm because of the track. We stayed on the north side, so the winds were out of the northeast initially, then from the north and northwest. And we heard the mayor mention that it was a perfect storm of sorts. Well, it was a perfect storm for Cape Breton because initially they were on the rain side of the system, and then as the low tracked a little further towards the east, they became pushed over to the wind side of the system. So by midnight or just past that, the winds had turned and become very, very strong. The center of that low pressure system now moving off quite dramatically. The rainfall numbers are impressive everywhere, Steve, as we know, but record rainfalls, 225 millimeters in Sydney. The October total for the month is 143.8. Here's a quick look at some other numbers. Over 100 millimeters along the eastern shore in towards Halifax. Quite significant in through the valley, but not nearly as high as across Cape Breton. The wind gusts were significant. The strongest wind, again, Cape Breton Island, 117 kilometers per hour. And not to alarm anyone, we are watching Hurricane Nicole, recently upgraded, that seems to be taking a similar path, but expected to stay well south of Sable Island at this time. We've learned, we should know better. We have to keep a close watch. We don't just watch on Friday and forget about it for the weekend, Steve. It's important. Every 24-hour period gives us a closer eye, a better look at how the storm system is unfolding and interacting with other systems around it.
Another important point here is that this wasn't a hurricane. It wasn't a tropical storm, but the wind and the rain that this system produced was hurricane-style, tropical force-style conditions.
That's right. 119 kilometers is that threshold to call it a hurricane force wind, and we had winds of 117 in Sydney, and perhaps even higher in some places. Those are recorded winds that we're aware of.
And as for the rain, more rain we've seen, more flash flooding probably than we've seen in 50 years, or pretty close.
Absolutely, Steve.